Welcome to my messy studio, everyone. My name is Mark, and I'm an artist, an art professor, and a fountain pen junkie. And in this video, I'm going to talk about one of my favorite fountain pen brands, Opus 88. I've showered praise on a number of my Opus 88 pens on my channel, and you see me using them often, but I think it's time for me to give the entire brand its due. I'll show you the many Opus 88 pens in my collection and tell you why I think this is just about the very best fountain pen brand for artists. Let's get started. Opus 88 is a fountain pen company out of Taiwan, which started as an OEM, an original equipment manufacturer for other pen companies, before producing pens under their own brand. All of their pens, with a few exceptions, have what is called a Japanese eyedropper design. At first glance, these pens look a little bit like vacuum fillers, with a rod running through the pen, which is engaged by the knob in the back. However, pushing the knob down does not create a vacuum, which pulls ink into the pen as it would with a vacuum filler. Instead, the rod is connected to a little stopper which seals the main ink reservoir from the feed. This ingenious design confers all of the advantages of eyedropper filling without any of the drawbacks. What are the advantages? The first is giant ink capacity. Since there's no space-hogging piston mechanism, you can fill the pen with a huge amount of ink. In these larger pens, as much as 3.5 milliliters. And unlike other filling systems, which require a bottle that is sufficiently full to draw ink through the nib, you can get the very last drop of ink from a bottle. Lastly, one can dilute or mix inks directly into the pen, something you can't do with any other filling system. The main problem with regular eyedropper filling pens is that they have a tendency to burp, which happens when the air inside their ink reservoir is warmed by the heat of your hand and expands, pushing ink out of the pen and onto your precious drawing. The sealing mechanism completely prevents this, essentially sealing the pen hermetically, making it not only completely burp-free, but also perfectly safe for travel, whether it be in a bag next to your silk handkerchiefs or in your pants pocket. Another disadvantage of eyedropper filling is that it usually takes some time for the pen to get going, since you're not dipping the nib into the ink to fill the pen. Usually it takes a minute, faster with some vigorous shaking, but with this pen, the action of sealing the mechanism pushes ink into the feed, starting the pen right away. Finally, sealing the mechanism also gives some degree of control over the wetness of the ink flow. When the seal is closed, the pen will write for a time, but more dryly than when the ink reservoir is open. This is very useful in situations where you have to put down a very fine, dry line. From my extensive online research, consisting of a single Google search, other than Opus 88, this filling system exists only on some vintage Japanese pens, some ridiculously expensive luxury pens decorated with Maki-E made by Denichiro, and this pen, the Mahjong C4, which is not a bad pen, but not built to the same quality standards as Opus 88. I really wish more pen companies got on board, because this, hands down, is the best way to fill a pen, at least for those that care about ink capacity and the peace of mind that comes with a sealing mechanism. However, Opus 88, with its many models, is doing a fantastic job providing pens for anyone looking for this filling system. Besides the advantageous filling mechanism, almost all the Opus 88 pens use either a number 5 or number 6 standard steel Yovo nib and housing units, which are found in very many expensive pens. These nibs are great on their own, relatively dry writing with pleasant feedback and a bit of bouncy line variation. But because they're standard size, it allows you to easily switch out the original nibs with a large number of other options. This is why almost every single one of my Opus 88s is fitted with some kind of custom nib. Now, these pens are not cheap, with most models hovering around $100. And you may ask, how can paying this much be justified if you're going to remove the original nib and use a different one? My answer is, all of these nibs are excellent specialty nibs and are themselves fairly expensive, and as such, deserving of being paired with a high-quality pen body. Now let's take a look at the Opus 88 pens in my collection. These three are the large models, This one is simply called the demonstrator, or sometimes confusingly the Coloro demonstrator. This one is called the Omar, and this one is the Jazz. They're basically the same pen, being very close to the same size at about 15 centimeters capped and 14 centimeters uncapped, and about the same weight, around 30 grams, with identical grip sections, and all using a number 6 steel JoWo nib and housing unit. Though these pens are on the larger side, they're fairly lightweight and well balanced. This demonstrator holds a 14K number 6 JoWo nib with a semi-flex modification from fpnibs.com, which is a company out of Spain that specializes in all kinds of specialty grinds. Very, very flexible, and it's paired with an ebonite feed that does an excellent job keeping up with the ink demands of this very ink-hungry nib. The Omar holds a 14K number 6 soft nib with an extra fine grind, also from fpnibs.com. It is one of the absolutely finest nibs in my collection in terms of line width, and has a touch of line variation to it. And the Opus 88 Jazz holds a truly special nib, an Aeroflex nib from Cactus Nib Experiments, which you can find on Instagram. Which has absolutely crazy line variation. By the way, these large Opus 88s can also be fitted with a Pilot parallel nib. So if I take out the housing unit, just untwist it, and then put in this Pilot parallel nib, which by the way has been modified with what's called a ruling pen modification. So one of the sides has been ground down to a curve, which gives you access to all kinds of crazy lines. Opus 88 also offers smaller pens. Here are 3 in that size, 2 of which, the Picnic and the Halo, are now tragically discontinued. Fortunately for us, the Coloro, these 2 pens, are going strong in a range of attractive color combinations. While smaller than the previous large demonstrator pens, they're still relatively large, all of them measuring about 14 centimeters capped and 12.5 centimeters uncapped. Here they are compared to a Lamy Safari. I find these pens to be absolutely ideal in size, being perhaps a bit more nimble in the hand than the larger pens. And while the ink capacity is smaller at 2 milliliters, it's nothing to be ashamed of. Furthermore, like the models that use a number 6 size nib, this uses a standard number 5 size JoWo housing, which allows for plenty of nib substitutions. The Halo is currently fitted with a lovely JoWo nib with a Fude customization from fpnibs.com. The Picnic and the Coloro are the crown jewels in my collection, with the Picnic fitted with a superb number 5 14K JoWo nib with a semi-flex customization from fpnibs.com. And the Coloro fitted with a vintage 14K flex nib made by Parker, which miraculously fit into the feed like a glove. This this Coloro is a recent purchase and still has the original nib in it, but there's a good chance that I'm going to switch it out with something more exciting soon. And finally, Opus 88 has a few pocket pen options, though true to the brand's nature, even these pens are on the larger side. Here is the Opus 88 Mini and the now sadly discontinued Opus 88 Fantasia. And here they are next to the continued Kaweco Sport. These pens are about 11.5 centimeters capped and uncapped a touch over 10 centimeters. However, they are meant to be used posted, becoming about 14 centimeters long. So Fantasia screws in to post, and the posting on the Mini is friction fit and not quite as tight. Both these pens use standard number 5 JoWo nib and housing units, which, true to my restless nature, are switched out with number 5 steel JoWo nibs with flex customizations, again from FP Nibs. The nib in this Fantasia is really special, the flexiest nib in my collection other than that crazy Aeroflex nib, which really belongs in a fountain pen circus if such a thing existed. So it starts off with a fine, if not an extra fine line, and then has pretty strong, bold line variation. This pen is also paired with an ebonite feed, which does a fairly decent job of keeping up with the ink flow. The flex nib in the Mini is not quite as impressive, particularly since it's paired with a regular plastic feed. So I have to be a little bit slower when I flex it, since it has a tendency to railroad. As mentioned, the Fantasia is no longer being made, but is still available occasionally through eBay, and is absolutely worth getting. The Mini I reviewed in detail and is not a favorite of mine, mainly for its uncomfortable grip section and a sharp step up due to this oddly placed metal ring. But if you want one, it's very much available in a ton of very silly, over-decorated models. All of these pens hit the sweet spot between comfort of use, practicality, and solid build quality, but in the interest of impartiality, they're not entirely without mostly minor faults. The first is price. Some of the larger models, while nowhere near the prices commanded by luxury brands, are still around $100, a price point that is uncomfortably close to some of the gold nib offerings of some of the Japanese brands. I believe the build quality and unique filling system make these pens worth the price, but I can see many artists who are just not used to spending more than $3 or $4 on a pen recoiling at what must seem like an absurd amount of money. To those people, I say, go buy yourself a few Jinhaos and enjoy. But to those willing to make an investment, this is about as nice a pen as you're going to need. The second irritation is that these pens are not as easy to clean as regular eyedroppers, since the rod gets in the way of sticking a wire brush down the barrel and giving everything a good scrubbing. I wish the pen disassembled in the back, but still, it's nothing terrible and definitely still easier than some of the piston fillers that you have to pull apart to fully clean. The third irritating flaw is the cap, which usually takes 4 or 5 turns to open, depending on the pen. This, as far as I know, is more turns than in any other pen brand. And why they designed their pens like this is anybody's guess. But for those of you that need a pen for quick capping and uncapping, these are definitely not the pens for you. However, I'm not one to fidget with my pen caps, so for me, this is not an issue. I should also note that despite what I think is excellent build quality, these pens are not bulletproof. The rod, which is metal on many pens, here is made of ebonite. Here is a different halo from this one, which I had on my table with the piston rod extended, and it fell, breaking the rod. So be careful and try to keep the knob closed when storing the pen. However, this pen is still usable, even though I can't engage the sealing mechanism. I hope you enjoyed this brief overview of the Opus 88 brand of fountain pens in my collection. This is an innovative company with a focus on unique design and quality control, and I'm looking forward to seeing what they come up with in the future. Provided, of course, that they keep the filling mechanism as a feature in their pens. Thank you so much for watching, and see you back in my messy studio very soon. Bye for now.